Hi, I'm Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center, or IRCC. In this episode, we will discuss how the West looks at India's recent founding of terror bases in Pakistan. We will also discuss how Pakistan is viewed by its immediate neighbors, Afghanistan and Iran. I have with me counter-terrorism and special operations specialist Anant Mishra. Anant is a Marie Curie Research Fellow at the University at the International Center for Policing and Security at University of South Wales. He is joining me from somewhere near Cardiff. Welcome to you, Anant.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having me again, sir.
Anant, you are in touch with defense strategic community in India and in Europe, if not elsewhere. I know you
Yes,
have
sir.
strong connections in Middle East. Uh, Going by the reaction of the Western media, I would love to believe that they either underestimate our capabilities or they purposely create doubt about it as part of the gray zone geopolitical contest. What is your opinion? How do you see the Europe reacting following this to this India-Pakistan thing? Over to you.
So thank you so much, sir. Sir, to be precise, I've been monitoring Operation Sindoor from its outset, and sir, in the initial days, or I wouldn't say hours, but in the initial days, so there was a lot of, I would say, there was a lot of strategic developing in the region because for the EU per se, if I may say, and I will decipher and I will in my assessment to you, sir, I will not bring the UK in because it needs a very different focus after Brexit. So talking about EU per se, sir. Um, the EU's strategic thinking was divided into three key factors, and during the time Operation Sindoor started, and then the ceasefire came into play, and then both the DTMOs spoke to each other. According to more, they saw India's New Delhi's action to be more measured, uh, proportional, and aligned with the policy of rapidly de-escalation, which is essentially they were very keen on wanting from the outset. EU's core principles, if I say very candidly, is revolves around international law, military restraint, and civilian protection. This is something they emphasize very clearly. So, in this element, India demonstrated operational maturity and regional awareness. The operation compelled EU institutions to shift from a value-based dialogue because they've always, I would say, catered New Delhi from the perspective of an engagement partner. But from this aspect, for what happened during Operation Sindoor, it culminated to an interest-based engagement, sir. Now, there's a shift. I've spoken to a lot
If you
of
kindly explain, if you
officials
kindly explain what
behind.
is the difference, just in one
Uh,
or two sentences, what is the difference between the two?
uh, EU institutions have always talked about a functional counterterrorism cooperation, but they did not go. They were looking for opportunities for having a foothold as to beyond a dialogue. New Delhi demonstrated that their reaction, or I would rather say their response, was not only just, but it was their duty to lawfully protect its citizens from acts of terror. Now, if you reflect those segments that was echoed in India's, in India's communication, kinetic communication, if I may call it very, very politely, uh, the balanced statement echoed the same, sir. So, if we go by verbatim of what the EU official statement was, it unequivocally condemned the Pahalgam terror attack, affirming that every state has the duty and the right lawfully to protect its citizens from acts of terror. Now, Although there was another element that says it both urged India and Pakistan to show restraint, maintain regional stability, and prevent escalation. But sir, if you look at the language very carefully, there is a subtle recognizes India's legal right to self-defense while reinforcing the diplomatic posture of what EU has always talked about for de-escalation. Now this is a change, sir. This is a new dimension that coming in. If you carefully see the word sent in the official response, this is a signal of growing EU's trust in India's ability to responsibly act within the international norms, setting the groundwork for deeper political engagements without any
Okay.
formal taking both the sovereignty cause and so the cooperation intact.
Okay. Uh, do they have, I mean, how do they look at it? Do they look, I mean, what is the view they have that about India's abilities, military abilities? Because,
Uh,
some
uh,
of us who are sitting over here, so, and we are laymen about operations, right? So we believe that, and this time the Indian official communication was very good.
Sir,
They
yes,
spoke every time with visual evidence.
yes,
Though I must say that Pakistan is a champion of grey zone warfare and creating all sorts of confusion and whatever. No, you have to give the devil its due. I mean, they are just good at that communication. They didn't put visual evidences as much, but somehow or the other, they were kind of I mean, at least if I look at the media presence, Western media presence, so they somehow had I mean, maintained good presence. But if I go by Indian version, official version, then we have done enough. We have sort of given a good exhibition of our abilities this time.
sir.
We could have done major damage. We did not. But having reached out to every place from Islamabad, Rawalpindi, everywhere, just Karachi, so every place we reached, which means that we could have done much bigger things. But this was just kind of a deterrent. That is our official view. How does establishments in
Sir.
Europe look at it?
They looked at it with very keen interest, and let me tell you, sir, there is when you look at from the perspective of Operation Sindoor and us for issue specific convergence between India and the EU, or historically, but these 3 days and the subsequent days essentially changed, not holistically, but changed the perspective of how they viewed India. So, sir, in terms of, I would divide this segment into two, sir: counterterrorism and maritime security. So there was always a growing appetite within Brussels for enhanced cooperation, sir, and Operation Sindoor kind of sealed the discussion, and there is growing interests to engage law enforcement establishments on terror financing, on disruption of terror financing networks across AFPAC, the Gulf, and the EU corridor. So proxy threat monitoring, which is something EU appreciated behind the corridors of how the intelligence assessments and how the coordination between all players came into play. So this is something that they really acknowledge that segment, which is the reason why you could possibly see in a couple of months or at best that kind of engagement happening. And then cyber radicalization tracking, particularly in relation to diaspora, um, uh, I would say based with influence campaigns. These are the three elements that the Brussels will be very interested in. Interesting. There's another interesting element, sir. Europol India working arrangement for 2021. Now, this is going to be leveraged in terms of more operational briefings on cross-border threats and exchange of counterterrorism data. Now, this is going to be a new dimension that may come up, which you may hear. So, in terms of maritime security, the EU-India maritime security dialogue, there is also a possibility for its scope to be expanded. So, you may see joint assessments of high-risk ports, escalation response planning near choke points. So, like for example, Hormuz, Bab el Mandab. You could also see cargo and port surveillance cooperation coming in from the EU and under the Global Gateway Initiative. Now, India has not been formally aligned. Essentially, we don't have an alliance. We've got partnership, we've got engagement. But sir, the functionally integrated mechanism that the EU has in terms of regional security and whole paradigm as a logic, that might expand the scope of engagement between India and EU, sir. And this directly in terms of the public diplomacy or the diplomatic implications, where I would say, India has elevated, and there's a calibrated response from New Delhi. So, sir, there is also something known as the EU avoided false equivalence, if I may say so, very candidly. EU only sent the information or the press release, which was very timed and very precise. Did not question India's counterterrorism response, but it still called. This marks a departure from the past tendencies to treat India and Pakistan as a crisis of symmetrical security failure, sir. Now, this did not happen this time.
So if I understand you clearly, the
Sir,
hyphenated part has
sir.
gone or
Yes, yes.
has diluted, which we wanted.
Sir,
We
it
never
is
liked
not,
it to be hyphenated. And second thing, you
sir,
said that it might trigger greater cooperation
sir,
in terms of both cross-border terrorism, exchange of data, and also in terms of maritime security. So, which means that they are looking at Indian abilities with seriousness. That it.
absolutely, sir. Absolutely. But to comment on the hyphenated part between India and Pakistan, sir, that is not going to change. Not in a way that New
We
Delhi
expect.
intends to, or not only as New Delhi-based scholars or Indian-based scholars do think about it should change, and with that gravity. But yes, there will be a certain impact that I can say very positively, sir. And in terms of strategic diplomacy, as you rightly pointed out, there is going to be an increased access to strategic dialogues within the EU framework. So you may see track Asia and Indo-Pacific scenarios, the global gateway discussions, involving maritime, digital, and energy corridors,
I fully
operational.
agree with you. I'm sorry for interjecting. I fully agree with
No, no,
you
no.
that the hyphenated part is not going to go overnight because it was created
Sure,
with a purpose, with geopolitical purposes in mind. So,
sure,
there is no reason why a country with a failed state, a poor
sure,
state of 1,200 or 1,300 dollar per capita with
sure.
nothing in, depending on the begging bowl of the world, got 24 IMF
Sure.
bailouts. There is a bailout in every 1 or 2 or 3 years. So there is no reason why this
Yes,
country is surviving or getting so much of attention. There are other
sure,
strategic reasons why it is getting attention. And that, okay, so they are not going to, that hyphen is to someone's interest. So
sure.
that we
Absolutely.
understand, that side. I have said, other question is, how does now whatever from India we will say about Pakistan, so thanks to the hyphen, right?
Sure,
So there will be kind of a perception and they will say something more, and that is always that enter into a volley of words. But how does Pakistan's neighbors, Afghanistan and Iran, see it?
sure,
We know that they have problems in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Afghan foreign minister of Taliban had expressed solidarity with India, condemned the Pahalgam attack first, and then foreign minister Jaishankar held a telephonic discussion with the acting foreign minister of Afghanistan government. So and they stood by India. Now my question to you is, first about Afghanistan, is that how do you look at it? I mean, how real are these this support? Over to you.
Sir, so we, as we all know, but you have a global audience. So it will be safe to say that Operation Sindoor struck targets in Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. But, sir, the aftershock of those coordinates that was felt very heavily in Kandahar across the Durand line, and more importantly, sir, the inner sanctum of the Taliban's leadership structure. Sir, this in terms of Afghanistan and Iran, sir, I can tell you that this wasn't just a cross-border military response that New Delhi sent to both the Taliban leadership and in Tehran. So, sir, I first to see the narration of this, sir. I first go on how it is going to impact the ISI Taliban relationship, because this
Okay.
is essentially where it is going to hurt the most. Now, sir, for 2 decades, Pakistan's inter-service intelligence has nurtured and manipulated Taliban, and their leadership operated Quetta under certain ISI oversight, while the Haqqani network was deeply embedded in eastern Afghanistan. It was considered for a very long time, and is still is, as a lawyer, who's now the Afghanistan's interior minister, is widely considered as the ISI's man in Kabul, and he has a direct line to Pakistan's military apparatus. Now, his network has protected a lot of Pakistani assets, trained foreign fighters, received weapons, logistics, continues to receive intelligence, and it continues to expand its hold in Afghanistan's urban security architecture. So he has a stronghold in this. Now, India's ability to decimate Abdul Rauf, now this is under the ISI's nose, is what I would call as publicly humiliating Pakistan's intelligence establishment.
Is this the man you were talking about who was responsible for killing of Daniel Paul?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he not only orchestrated that, he's responsible for doing a lot of things, sir. Sir, and he has been a man even in the chatter for a lot of US intelligence community, which I had an interaction with. I spoke to them on a lot of personal note. So now Taliban saw all of this element, and then the Kandari dominated Emirate Shura, which is, more than a security embarrassment for Pakistan. It was a confirmation for what the entire Shura thought of, or had a very perspective, a grand perspective, but they didn't had an opportunity to say, which is the confirmation of long-held suspicions that Pakistan has, which now can no longer be treated, can no longer be suppressed. So, sir, the Emir Habibullah Khunjada, while seeing all of this, who's the spiritual and the ultimate authority in Taliban hierarchy, has historically resisted the ISI influence within the Shura. And he presides from Kandahar. He has insulated the Shura from Pakistani interference. And this has kind of there is a kind of tussle that normally frequently happens between the Haqqani's growing influence in a political power within the Shura and outside the Shura. So Operation Sindoor has now hardened that resistance, sir. Now it has indirectly and tacitly provided Shura with the moral and strategic ammunition that it always talked about. Uh, it may now, sir. There's a lot of I've spoke to a lot of people, a lot of experts in the territory with the Shura directly, and there are mixed opinion. But I'm not going to sideline all of them, the good and the bad. But the crux of the matter remains that some experts opine that he may reassert internal control politically, doctrinally, and militarily, sir. This is what some experts have said it, those who've worked with the tribal community directly. And there could be an internal realignment. It's again a very far-fetched thought, sir. I don't know how far it intends to go, but they said there could be a possibility of internal realignment. So the Haqqani network has a relationship with foreign elements, has a strong strategic reliance on ISI, but that strategic reliance has now turned into strategic liability, sir. And the Kandahari clerics,
It's a
whose
strategic liability for ISI or Taliban.
strategic liability for Taliban, sir. Because first it was Reliance. First they were getting strong support against when they were targeting the US and the ISAF. But now they've become a strategic liability, sir. And this is something that the Kandari clerics have now openly said it. They have embodied the ISI's failure. And sir, there could be an internal tussle that can happen to curb Haqqani's dominance over both in interior ministry affairs and in intelligence networks, sir. Now, considering this as a hypothesis, and this is, to be very honest, it's it's a shadow information that probably comes out from all of that. And those who have spoken to, sir, they were very positive, but I will still very be cautious. In now, even if we include this as a hypothesis, sir, there could be a freeze on JEM and LET activity that happens in Khost and Paktika. So those foreign fighters that essentially have LET alliance or Hezbollah alliance training in the Haqqani territory, there could be a pause, a strategic pause. But again, it's now, sir, I'm going to talk about this.
Isn't that too much to expect? LET and JEM were created to attack India. So, I mean, these two organizations have never attacked,
Yes, sir, but
done any terrorist act in Pakistan. And so they will.
Exactly, sir. Exactly, sir. So that is exactly, sir, and that is the reason why they have their training apparatus outside Pakistan. So they were the Haqqanis used to involve them into training apparatuses, sir. They never targeted the Taliban. That these two terror organizations were explicitly used against Indian offenses. But the thing is, sir, they had their training mechanism there. So their training facilities are going to stop, sir. And again,
Okay.
this is a hypothesis.
Your hypothesis,
It's
right?
still far-fetched from how the yes, sir. It's again a hypothesis.
So if I
But sir, the
just summarize, is
sir,
that you are saying that there is a lot of substance in Taliban's expression of solidarity with India, and you are saying that it is backed
oh yes, sir,
by
absolutely,
these strategic liabilities or that were exposed by the Indian attack on these terror
sir.
hideouts, and which had actually hurt ISI because they were their babies.
Oh, absolutely, sir. And there is this is, sir, what I call it as a strategic fallout between ISI, which is now being isolated, and Taliban, which is now at a relationship of crossroads. Now, sir, I hypothesize again, sir. It is again how it is going to pan out, sir. There isn't going to be broken alliances. It's not going to be like it's not going to be like calling off the alliances. But, sir, there will be a recalibration of how the relationship will go ahead. So, the ISI's image as a regional puppeteer is in shambles, sir. The Haqqani network could potentially face pressure from both within and outside the Shura, sir. The Shura may emerge as more a nationalist Islamist bloc, sir, and it might distance itself from the transnational jihad and foreign proxies. So India's strike, the Operation Sindoor have rewired Taliban's internal decision making in some way or the other, sir. And it has done it in a way that any negotiation or sanctions could have possibly done, sir.
Thanks. I would love to continue listening to you, but for audience, we always have to keep things concise. My next question is, as I discussed with you, that Iran.
Sir.
Now look at Iran. Pakistan, Iran has a very thriving informal trade relations, avoiding the sanction.
Sir.
Someone said the other day that some 12 to 13% of the oil that is used by Pakistan are actually smuggled out of Iran.
Sir.
And equally, Iran also smuggles in a lot of things from Pakistan, I believe. Now, Iranian foreign ministry delegation was in India when India was firing missiles at Pakistan. And they expressed solidarity. They condemned the barbaric attack at Pahalgam and expressed their kind of support to India. How do you believe that this axis, I mean, India-Iran axis is going to work vis-a-vis Iran-Pakistan axis, Iran-Islamabad axis? How are they going to work? To what extent? I'm just trying to understand from you that to what extent these are just lip services, whether Iran will keep, giving drones and many other things to Pakistan to, do its own work? Over to you.
Sir, you've started your points with the trade, sir. So by 2025, sir, Iran-Pakistan trade has reached 2.8 billion, sir. And there is a plan to scale it to 10 billion, sir, using infrastructures like the Poland Gulf electricity transmission line. There are border markets coming in, including the Mand Pishin, and the proposed completion of the long-stalled Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, sir, which reflects Iran's policy towards Pakistan as more pragmatic and convergence. And this policy sir, has its foundation on shared energy security needs, the involvement or the Chinese mediation via the BRI or the CPEC connectivity, and the mutual desire to stabilize volatile borderlands, particularly, sir, the Sistan Balochistan. But then, sir, what happens is Operation Sindoor happens, India's precision retaliation. And this reshaped because, sir, the strike did not only land in Pakistani territory, but uncomfortably close to Iran's risk threshold, sir. So Tehran reached to a certain discomfort with the high risk of profile Pakistani holds. And Iran watched the Operation Sindoor play in public silence, but there was a good privately unease. So the precision, lethality, and the intelligence coordination exposed Pakistan's operational vulnerabilities and inability to control the transnational terrorism that it sponsors. So, sir, for Tehran, the message was very sharp. Like, if Pakistan cannot contain LET and Jaish, they may be the next to suffer this fallout without provocation or preparation. And for this entire segment that happens, the IRGC now started viewing Pakistan as a risk factor than the neighbor. Now, this is an internal discussion that essentially happened within Tehran, sir. And there will be a less likely and overtly impression of there will be greater border insecurity. And uh, Iran, which has always struggled against the Sunni Baluch insurgents and jihadist elements, spilling over from the Pakistani side, uh, the ISI linked safe havens has revived long standing Iranian suspicions that Islamabad's counterterrorism cooperation is conditional and conveniently selective. Now, they've always thought about this. So, how is it going to affect Tehran? So, Tehran is going to have more IRGC's presence along the eastern signal intelligence, human intelligence monitoring for Pakistani linked clerical schools and madrasas, joint
Question to
patrols.
you. Why should Iran be so afraid when China is the common friend of both Iran and Pakistan?
Sir, I wouldn't call it afraid, sir. Afraid is not a word that aligns with Tehran, and I would rather say, sir, Tehran's policy, foreign policy or foreign engagement for expansive regional integration in terms of Pakistan is active engagement. So do you see the connotation? It is going to be very selective in terms of having engagement with Pakistan on a lot of fronts because, sir, thus
The
there
stigma,
is a quite
the stigma is working here. So India could
exact
increase the cost of, the cost of Pakistan, the stigma that has
absolute.
become stronger. That's a very interesting point that you have touched upon.